Good afternoon, everyone. We are ready to get started with our meeting today. Wait till everyone's getting out of the waiting room. Hope you are ready for back to school. I think we've had a few schools who are already starting. Many of you doing professional development this week and starting later in the week. So we are wishing you a smooth transition into back to school. We have a lot of things to talk about today, getting ready with all of the changes for Strong Readers Act. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared so we can look at the agenda. We have the agenda, link to the agenda in the chat if you want to follow along. And let me get, where's my share? All right. So here's the agenda. And like I said, we have the link in the chat if you want to follow along on your own screen. But just starting off, welcome you all back. Welcome you back to school. Welcome you to the school year. Thank you for serving students in your community for another year and being committed to working with those students. We thank you for all you do with our kids in Oklahoma every year. Just for if you're new to Strong Readers World, my name is Deann Jones. I'm the project director for Strong Readers here in the state of Oklahoma. We have Melissa Augram on with us today, who is the program director for all things literacy in the state. And then we have a new hire with us today. We have Madison. We are glad to have her on board. She is in, this is just her second week being with us. So still new here at the State Department. And we are glad to have her on board. Her name is Madison Trussell, and she is going to be our literacy, professional learning, and compliance specialist. So she's going to be helping some with strong readers, and she's also going to be handling a lot of our professional development. When we start more letters cohorts, Lit Cop, she's going to be taking over handling the stipends and registrations and working with the vendors on that. So I'm going to let Madison introduce herself and kind of tell you about her experience and what led her here to the State Department.
Right. Hello, everyone. I am Madison Trussell. Super excited to be here, super excited for this first monthly meeting, and just to dive right in and get ready to go. So I moved from Texas almost a year ago. Back in Texas, I was teaching, my first couple years was second grade math, science, social studies. And then I had moved into an interventionist role for first through eighth grade with reading and math. And then I was also a gifted and talented teacher for third through fifth grade. And then I was also a curriculum specialist. But for the past almost year, I've been home with my little 1-year-old daughter and just decided I'm ready to go back to work. And I was like, what better than to work for the State Department of Education? So I applied, met these wonderful women, and still meeting some of you as my time here goes, and can't wait to get to know y'all and get started this school year.
Great. All right, thank you, Madison. We're really glad to have Madison here, and you may be hearing from her as she will be on these calls with us and helping us handle a lot of strong readers business. So on to our next item. We have
Deann, hang on a second.
Yes.
You are not sharing your agenda. You just have a blank window screen showing.
Ooh. Let me stop the share and try again.
Before we get interrupted.
Yes, let's get that fixed. What is going on here? How's that? Is that the agenda?
Well, there we go.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So we've introduced Madison already, and we're going to go on to talking about the survey. At the end of the school year, last year in May, I sent out a survey on our last call for just getting feedback from you guys, what you liked about our meetings, what you would like to see change. And so these are some of the things that I've done to adjusted the meetings due to your feedback. First of all, is the time. We left the time the same. By overwhelming response, 1 p.m. got the most votes again. So we're gonna leave it at 1 p.m. on the second Tuesday of every month. But some of the things we will be changing is we're not gonna do the mini PD sessions anymore. Last year we tried to do just a short, like 12 minute professional development, literacy-based professional development. And the overwhelming response that I got from you guys is that you would rather us not do that. You would rather just stick to Strong Readers business and preserve some of your time. So we're going to not have those this year. Another thing that this was a suggestion that someone just typed in their survey, and I thought it was a great suggestion. So we're doing this is someone said they thought it'd be helpful if they could submit their questions ahead of the meeting. So that I would have those questions and could address them in the meeting instead of just trying to always have them in the chat and respond to the chat. So I did make a form, and you can find that posted on our website below the Zoom links, where you can submit your questions to us ahead of time, and then I can answer them in the meeting. So I did look at the questions that you've already submitted. Some of them are going to be addressed just during the natural course of our meeting. I made sure that if it was something that applied to something I was already going to talk about, that I made sure I answered those questions within that section. And then I also added a section at the end where I'm just going to address some questions that didn't get addressed naturally in one of my other sections. So I thought that was great suggestion from one of our viewers. And so we added that in as well. And I hope that will be beneficial for us this school year. One thing you will notice is our website update. So if you've been looking on our website in the last 3 weeks or so, we've had a lot of change, and we've had people call and tell us some of our pages don't work anymore, and it's because we've changed our websites. So I'm going to click into it in just a minute and show you what they look like. But I want to say first, before we go into them, that all of our forms have been updated for the school year. So every form you will find on the Strong Readers website right now is current, ready for use for the 26-27 school year. Now, our guidance documents are not all updated yet, because our guidance documents have to have approval. And so some of them will be released after we receive approval. So on that is like our implementation guide and our quick guide. We're still waiting on approval on those to post the newly updated ones. But all of our forms are ready for you for back to school for use. And then our technical guidance from our screeners for the new upcoming school year, all of those have been updated for the new school year and posted. There's only one that's not updated, and that is iReady. We're waiting on their response with theirs, but all of the other ones have sent us their new, if any scores changed, any guidance need to change, and we have all of those posted. So I want to go in and look at our Strong Readers pages with you. If you go into the Strong Readers, if you go into the State Department website, first of all, and you're needing to find us, you can click in that search bar and just type in Strong Readers Act into the search bar, and it will bring you to this landing page for the Strong Readers Act. So this is our Strong Readers Act landing page. And then over here to the left, you can find all of the pages under Strong Readers. But on the landing page, we have the purpose, and here's the links to legislation. So if you ever need to look up something in legislation and see exactly the wording or what it says, we have the links to all the legislation here. There's this implementation guide, which once again isn't updated just yet, but it will be soon. This is the Dyslexia and Dysgraphia Handbook. This has changed recently to where it is now, instead of just like a PDF or something, it's a live application you go into. And if you haven't checked that out recently, you need to look at that. This quick guide is not updated just yet. We're still waiting on approval for that. So if you click right now, you would find last year's. The family guide, all of those strategies and activities for home, that hasn't changed. You can use those. And then let's go into these different sections. So if you go to the assessment page, we have our exemptions and the exemption form. There was no changes to that really for the year. We're actually gonna talk about this a little bit later on. This I used last year at this time of year, and so we decided to leave it posted. We'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to the assessment section of our call today. And then here's our newly approved list for the that actually needs to be changed. For the 26-27 school year, these are the ones that are approved, and these are all updated except for iReady. And you can find their guidance documents there. And then this just tells you about the 30 days. Let's go to support for schools. This is where we have our Zoom link posted all the time. So since we don't get to send out our own departmentalized newsletters anymore, this is where you can go at any time to find the Zoom link. The Zoom link is the same for the entire school year. So if you have this meeting ID written down somewhere, this Zoom link saved, it's the same for the whole school year, and the passcode is OSDE. These are the dates of when our meetings were going to be. It's the second Tuesday of every month. And then later you can come back here and find the recording links. So probably by tomorrow, we'll have today's recording posted here, and you can find that. And then this is telling you that if you want to submit your questions to us ahead of time, this is where you can go to click and submit your questions ahead so that I can have those ready to answer those for you. This is our Strong Readers for 2026 presentation. If you haven't watched that before or been somewhere I presented that this summer, you can watch this recording of the presentation that I did for the webinar. And you can also find my slides if you have any questions about some of the changes for this current school year for 26-27. I encourage you to watch that or check out these slides. This is the implementation guide that I was saying we're also waiting on having the new one posted, waiting on some approval for that. These are our documentation. All of these are updated. So the new slip is shortened. It's only a front and back, and you can find that here, as well as a fillable PDF for that if you want the fillable version. We have the slip for 4th and beyond, and we have that in fillable version. And then our brand new student literacy intervention plan 30-day update. This is the form that we've developed for that. And then there's a fillable version for that. And then this is our disclaimer that you do not have to use our 30-day update form, but if you choose to develop one locally, then you need to make sure that it includes these certain criteria. And that would be on your district to make sure that it's containing the required components. This is a slip addendum for if you've already completed the slip before you finish the screening for the characteristics of dyslexia, and you would later need to go back and complete the slip addendum. That's the addendum. And then this is the fillable version of the addendum. We have some family communication resources for you here. And then we go to data and reporting. This is where you can find the updated timeline. And we'll go into that in just a little bit, but talking about some of our new our dates for this coming school year, they're pretty much the same as they were last year, but you can find that information there. Website format. If you haven't done your website format, that is due September 1st to be put on your website with all of your information from the previous school year. And there's the guidance for that. Here's where you can find all of our tutorial videos for all of our reporting. Funding page is a little bit smaller. It just has our funding checklist with the OCAS codes and where you can go in if you're wanting to buy technology with Strong Readers funds. You have to have prior approval for that. This is where you can go in and complete that form for approval. And then our interventions page has some language for MTSS. We also have all of our slip posted here as well. So they're really posted on 2 different locations. I felt it was appropriate to have them in support as well as in the intervention page. So we have that there. And then this is all of our intervention resources where if you're looking for maybe some great intervention to use for phonics, or you can go on here and sort these and see what they, so I can scroll over here. Yeah, so you can see what skill areas they address. And so check that out if you have never looked into that. Let's go back into our agenda. So just wanted to do a little quick walkthrough since we had a lot of changes to our website. Now let's talk about reporting. This is the time of year where we're doing lots of reporting. And we currently have open the Strong Readers Annual District Reading Plan. And then our BOI is set to open on August 15th. So this is the updated timeline. And let's just look at that quickly. For the 26-27 school year, it's pretty much the same with one change I'll talk about in a minute. But we have the annual district reading plan, same dates as last year. It's open on August 30th. It's open on August 1st, closed on August 30th. That is currently open right now. And then the BOI opens on August 15th and closes on October 1st. In single sign-on, we do have a little difference on once you go into single sign-on, we do have a new application for them. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. This giving you some information about the slip and when they're due. And then the EOI is April 15th and due May 30th. And that tells you the questions that we ask on that. And you will notice that the summer school report is absent from this. So we did remove the summer school report. It is no longer its own separate report. Instead, we added those questions to the BOI. So if you did summer school this August or July, June or July, and you were looking for that summer school to put in your information, it's not going to be a separate report. Just hang on to that data. When this BOI opens August 15th, it's just those questions are added into that BOI. So you will enter that there. Where I had the support for schools and all of those things were listed there. And so that's the updated tutorial walking you through our new platform. So it's still in single sign-on, but when you go into single sign-on, previously you had an application that said Strong Readers Annual District Reading Plans, and you had a separate one that said Strong Readers Act Survey. Now they're just combined, and it says Strong Readers Reporting. So you go into the application that says Strong Readers Reporting, and all of our Strong Readers reports are in that same application now. Just a few reminders here about the annual district reading plan. And then once we get this reporting part, I'll pause for some questions. But in the annual district reading plan, a few reminders about the user roles. So if you are in as a superintendent or you have a district user role, then you have access to complete the district plan. So that's the sections about the district timeline and the funding. So you have to have a district role in order to complete those. Then when you get to the site plan, those people I mentioned above, they can complete a site plan, but also a building principal or a site user role can complete a site plan. So sometimes we have people who have multiple roles. And just remember that if you were signed in as a site person, you're not going to be able to access that district role. So making sure that you're signed in with the right role to complete the part that you are working on. And then someone with the district role has to complete that district part first. They have to complete the district timeline and funding first before it's going to open the site plans. And then once the site plans are open, someone with either site user role or one of those district user roles can complete the site plans. And once they save and submit, those have to be confirmed by the site principal. And then once all the site plans are confirmed, the district superintendent will have to certify the plan. There is no longer that option that you can copy last year's report. That's no longer on those. You will be completing the information all from fresh this year. And then once we have to have all of those submitted, and they all have to be OSDE approved before any Strong Readers funds can be released to districts. One thing we've already had some questions about, and so I wanted to talk about before we open for other questions, I think this one was submitted, and I've also received several calls about, is there is a new assurance statement in the site plan this year. And it's saying that they are assuring that they have someone that meets the qualifications for literacy. So I've copied this right here. You can see this right here was new in statute, and it says that school districts will have a minimum of one reading specialist, interventionist, or a teacher with an early literacy micro-credential. So they're saying that every elementary site will have someone that meets one of these criteria. So when you're completing the site plan, there's a little check mark ahead of this criteria, this assurance. If you don't have someone who meets one of those criteria, it says that you need to contact the Office of Literacy. And then there's below it, there's a second option that you will click that says, we are acknowledging that we do not have someone who meets one of the above mentioned criteria. We have contacted the Office of Literacy and we have a plan to remedy this and to have someone in place who has one of these criteria in the future. So if you don't have someone who meets one of these criteria, please contact our office. We're just collecting right now names of schools who don't have someone, and we're going to help you. We know this is a new requirement. And so if you don't have someone who meets this, we want to help you get someone trained so that you do have this and you can be in full compliance with this. So we will be collecting information. It may be a matter of we're gonna, get someone on a waiting list to go through one of the things that would qualify them, like a letters training cohort or a lit cop, or one of the things that would satisfy this requirement. So if you need help with this, make sure you call our office, email me, we'll get you on the list. We'll help you get a plan ready to have someone that would fulfill this requirement for your school. Another thing just that I get a lot of questions about, so I want to review, is the testing windows. So now the way it is, the district timeline has to be completed first for those site plans ever even open up. And when whoever it is that's completing the district timeline, they can have a 3-week window for each, for the BOI, the MOI, and the EOI. And then when you open your site plan, it's going to show you what the district window is. So remember, the district gets 3 weeks. But at your site, you can only have 2 weeks. So it's going to limit your selection to 2 weeks within the time that your district picks. So the district can pick 3 weeks, but as a site, you pick 2 of their weeks, and that would be your site window. So we get a lot of questions when people would say, it's not letting me pick my site windows. Well, it's going to restrict you to what your district said. And one improvement we did make this year is that when you're in your site, it's going to tell you right above your testing, when you're putting in your testing window, it's going to tell you what the district entered. Because we were running into that some, is that they wouldn't even know what their, wasn't communicated well, and maybe the sites didn't know what the district entered. So now it is telling you in the site plan what your district entered, and then it's letting you pick within those. Moving into just actually, I'll wait right there. Do we have any questions about the annual district reading plan before I move into the BOI, Melissa? Because that was a lot.
There are not any questions. There is one on the website updates, and you might just jot this down and I'll remind you before we get off the call, but they're looking for the guidance for the what sites need to have posted on their websites, that they're having a hard time finding that with the updates that we've made over the summer.
Okay. I'm assuming like the strong readers form, the website format requirement.
Yes, I'm assuming that's
yeah.
also what is.
I actually am I'm gonna talk about that in just a minute, and then
Perfect.
it is on the website too. So we'll perfect. We'll get to that. We will talk about
and
that.
Then I have one other question about the most recent requirement is, what if the 4th and 5th grade are intermediates? Do they still have to have the reading specialist, interventionist, or micro-credentialed teacher, or the elementaries that feed into that intermediate? I would say, honestly, this law is pertaining to, it's a supplementing strong readers, so it is a K-3 emphasis. So schools that serve students in kindergarten through 3rd grade or any of those 4 grade levels need to be able to meet this requirement.
Right. Obviously we think it's great if you have someone for your 4th and 5th grade sites, but yeah, I think the requirement would be, it's a Strong Readers Act, and it's really K through 3rd grade. So let's move on to the beginning of the year report. So once again, for when you're looking for your Strong Readers surveys, they're gonna just be under that same tab where it says strong readers reporting. And then once you go into strong readers reporting on the left-hand side, you will click into the left-hand side. First, it has the district plans. Below that, it has the strong readers surveys. So I do have an updated tutorial for the BOI, literally just posted on our website today. So you can look at that, and that tutorial will lead you through what's currently on there. Remember that it does now include some questions about summer school. So when you start completing your BOI, make sure you have your data from summer school handy, because you'll have to know like how many students from each grade were enrolled. And I think it asked about how many teachers you had for summer school, and as well as a little description about your summer school. So all those same things that were in the summer school report, they're just now in the BOI. This opens August 15th, closes October 1st. One thing's new right here. One new thing you will be asked on the BOI that we have not previously asked you is explicitly how many students you have that will be receiving tier 2 interventions and tier 3 interventions. Previously, we just asked you how many students you tested and how many students were identified for reading difficulties. So it didn't matter if they were, tier 3, tier 2, or previously we called it tier 1 plus. Now we're calling it tier 1 with enhanced support. So it didn't really matter. It was just all of those combined. But now it is, we need separate numbers for all the tiers. And so you are going to have to know your tier 2 and tier 3 numbers separately and report those. And then all of these reports have to be submitted and approved. And before we can send out funds, this report is how we get your numbers to know what your allocation is. So we have to have this from every district. So really making sure that we're adhering to this timeline on this one, because it being due October 1st, that is when we can start calculating allocations as we're approving all of the reports. So really important that we're getting those in on time. Anything about that report before I move on to the website requirement?
I do not see anything right now.
Look, that report's, it's a little shorter and a little easier to have answers on, but we do have the updated tutorial, which you can find, and I will walk you through some of that. Let's talk about the website requirements. We had a few questions about this, and this is only the second year for this. Last year was our first year that this had to be posted, but it was put in with strong readers 2 years ago. And then you would really, the first year we're just collecting data. And so last year was the first year it had to be published. But the requirement says that districts have to post this data on their website by September 1st with their data from the previous school year. Reminder that all of this data is on the site level, with the exception of the expenditures. So when we get to the bottom section where you're talking about funds, that's district level funds. And we're only talking about strong readers expenditures, not what you're spending all of your money on, just strong readers. So we do have a format that you use, and this is the format everyone's supposed to use. So we don't want you to make your own format. We want you to use ours. It is required to use ours. And also you will note that our format as it is ADA compliant. It has ADA accessibility requirements, meets all of that. We highly recommend that you use it in this format instead of converting it to another format. If you do choose to convert this to a different format to post it to your website, then it is up to your district to ensure that it has continued ADA compliance. Another reminder is this Excel sheet, and I'll open it just a minute, but this Excel sheet has some things embedded in it to ensure some student privacy. So if a number is less than 10, instead of displaying like 7, it's going to put less than 10. And you, in order to maintain that privacy, you really need to lock the Excel sheet before you post it. Because if it's not locked, even if it says less than 10, if they hover over it, it's going to show that number, and it would show it in the at the top there. So make sure that you lock those. We do have a guidance document right here that you can review that would give you some guidance in completing that format. It does answer, when we were creating that last year, we took some of the questions we had from other people and tried to answer them as we were making that guidance document. So if you look at that, that should help you. Another note is that we had some people say that if they took our format and then they put it into their Google Drive, it also kind of changes the format. And so that's not recommended either. Quickly just gonna open. I know it's not opening. Oh, I know why, because it makes you download it. Okay, I don't want to open that for you right now. When you click that, it makes you download it and do it. But we have that. You can download it from our site. We have the guidance document, and then as well as on, if you watch the Aug.2026 presentation, we have a slide that shows that format to you as well. Any questions about any further questions, Melissa? Because you said there was one about the website requirement.
Yeah, well, and actually somebody got into the beginning of year report. Are you good with
Okay.
me backing up?
Yes.
Will only the school site that hosted summer school be responsible for reporting numbers?
That's a great question. I'm glad someone asked that. I do talk about that in the BOI tutorial. So what I want you to do, everyone's going to have a question about summer school. When you go into the BOI, the last question is, did you host summer school? And it's just a yes or no. And if you put yes, it's going to open up all the summer school questions. If you put no, then you just submit. Here's what we want you to do. If you're co-opt with other sites, or even maybe some districts who co-opt, some of our smaller districts, what we want you to do is, if you were the host site, we want you to put yes, and we want you to count every student who attended your summer school, regardless of where that student is enrolled during a typical school year. Okay, so only the host site to enter the numbers. If you are co-opt and you're not the host site, I want you to enter no, you did not host summer school, even though your students attended a summer school. If you were not the host site, just enter no. That way we're not getting any numbers duly reported. And it's not going to punish you. I've had people ask that, are we going to be punished because it looks like we're not offering that opportunity to our students? No, you're not. We just need the overall numbers of how many students in our state went to summer school. So we're not even really tracking it by what site they attend. So you're not being punished in any way. If you didn't host it, put no, and only the host sites can enter the numbers.
And then the last question was, do the number of tier 1 enhanced students have to be reported?
So we're not asking you that, but we could calculate it. So what we're asking is, you're going to have the number of students that you tested. You're going to have the number of students who are identified for reading difficulty. So that includes all those tiers. And then you're specifically calling out tier 2 and tier 3. So I could figure out how many students you have in that tier 1 with enhanced support just by subtracting from your overall students that were identified, and then subtracting tier 2 and tier 3, but we don't have a separate column for that. The reason for that is, in our new funding allocation, you're getting additional funds for tier 2 and tier 3. And that's why we are calling those out separately, but we certainly could calculate how many you have from overall identified. Okay. There are lots of changes. I don't want to spend just tons of time on the changes. So if you haven't watched, if you didn't watch one of the Strong Readers 2026 webinars that we hosted, there is a recording of one of those on our website if you want to hear in more detail about all of the changes that happened due to Senate Bill 1776. But I want to talk just quickly about some of the main ones. One of them was that you do have to give a 30-day update for families of students on the slip, including our 4th and 5th graders who on those getting continued interventions and are on a slip. So you can find, and I just showed you all ago, the form for those updates. And just a reminder that if you develop your own, it has to include data about the progress of the student and how they're making progress toward grade level reading and the strategies. This is the exact language from statute of what it has to include right there. And then one thing that, if you're listening to the webinar, is we did say it has to be written notification, and we were waiting to see from legal about if that could be digital. And we did receive word back from legal that yes, it can be digital. So a lot of our schools were already asking, instead of sending home, your form, could we instead send it digital instead of sending home a paper form? could we send this in Parent Square or whatever it's called that your school uses as your digital platform? And we were told, yes, that would be acceptable. It'll be recommended that, you are that I know in some of those you can see like what date you sent it. Some of you, I've even been told from districts that you can tell what date the parent opened it. That's great. That gives you great records of that you sent the notification, the parents received it. So that definitely would fulfill that requirement. It doesn't require a signature. So if you're sending home the paper one, it doesn't say you have to have a signature. However, if you're sending home the paper ones, it still would be helpful for you to document just when you sent them home. Like I sent them home, you know, and write down the date. Sent home my whole class is on this date. So you don't have to have confirmation from receipt of the parent, but definitely we want to make sure you're documenting that you are sending it. And if you have digital proof of that, that's great as well. Another change is that we're no longer sending notices of proficiency. So they took that out of statute with the bill. So we will no longer be sending those. That's a change from the previous 2 years. So previously you sent these if the student reached the 60th percentile rank on a screener. You would send that notice that their student was on track for proficiency and unlikely to need interventions. We're not doing that anymore. So that's removed, and we're glad that that's removed. And really the reason for that is because using a screener, the purpose of the screener is really for determining risk, and using them for determining and proficiency is not really recommended. So we're glad that that's gone. We're no longer going to be using our screeners to determine proficiency because they're really meant to identify risk. So you will not find that notice of proficiency anywhere on our website. If you still have any of those forms lingering around your school, get rid of them. We are not going to be using those anymore. And then another thing that's removed is the Science of Reading PD 10% requirement. Previously, we had that requirement that our districts who received at least $2,500 had to spend 10% of their Strong Readers funds on professional development from one of our approved PD vendors for literacy professional development. That spending requirement has been removed. And so with that, we also did away with, we had a separate program code. We had a separate OCAS program code for tracking that requirement. And now we're no longer going to be tracking that since it's no longer a requirement. So you won't have to use that. It was program code 439. You won't have to use that anymore. We will still be keeping that, what was previously an approved list of PD. Now it's just moved to a it's just guidance, just like we have for the intervention materials. If you're looking for something good, here's some stuff that we've reviewed. And that's how our PD is now too. It's not required that you use some off of there. But if you're looking for some good PD, this is a good place for you to start and know that these have been reviewed by a panel of on our literacy team. And so they'd be a good place for you to look when you're looking for some quality PD. And then funding saw a really big change. So this is one of the things I was talking about. One of the reasons that changed us to have to know your tier 2 and tier 3 student numbers. So first thing, and I don't have this written on here, but if you watched any of the 2026 webinars, we had a really large increase in our Strong Readers funding. For the last 2 years, we have received $17.5 million. And this year, our Strong Readers allocation is $47.3 million. So significant, I mean, more than double the amount of funds, and 100% of those funds go out to our districts to spend to provide quality literacy instruction and interventions for their students. So I wanted to just go over how our funds are going to be allocated this year, because that's also a big change. With the big increase in funding, they also changed how we're calculating how much money each district gets. So previously you just got it based on how many students you had performing below the level. So your students that were on a slip, you got money allocated for every student you had on a slip at the beginning of the year. Now this is what statute language says. It says that 40% of the funds, so 40% right now of $47.3 million will go to the base allocation. And then that base allocation is going to be that every school will get money for every student enrolled in kindergarten through 3rd grade. They're going to get X amount of dollars, which will be determined by how much our enrollment is across the state. We'll use that. We'll come up with a per pupil allotment, and you will get that per student you have enrolled kindergarten through third grade. And then weighted allocation, the statute says that 30% minimum of the $47.3 million would go to a weighted allocation based on student need. And it really says in statute that that is for tier 2 and tier 3 students. And then the last up to 30% is incentive allocation. We are still developing rules on what the incentive allocation is going to be, the rules behind determining that. So, you know, it could be your improvement on how many students you have on a slip, or it could be moving from tier to tier. We're still working on the rules for that. And since this is a beginning year for that, and we didn't previously get numbers from you of who was on tier 2, and I mean, how many were on tier 2 and tier 3, we're going to use this year as just a baseline year where we're gathering that information from you, which means we will not have the data and we don't have the rules in place for the incentive allocation for this year. So if you'll notice on this column, this is how it's going to look this year. So for the 26-27 school year, for your distribution, instead of giving this 30% down here as an incentive allocation, we moved it to these other areas. So we're deferring this by 1 year for the incentive allocation. Instead, we're moving this money up here. So now for your base allocation, we're going to use 55% of the 45%, 47.3 million will go to the base allocation. And then the other 45% of that money will go out as weighted allocation. So it's just going to look a little different this school year versus in the future when we start doing the incentive. Any questions over all of the changes, including the funding? Because I know the funding is a really big change.
There is not at this
Oh.
time. Most of these I have been able to answer in the chat. However, there are some that I have stated that I am forwarding this question to Deann. That is usually because this is a more nuanced or involved question, and I am recording those so that we can address those after we've had some of them require some research or some input from our legal department. So please don't feel that we are ignoring a question. We are recording that so that we can address that as appropriate. We do not ever want to give you an incorrect answer.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. All right, let's move on to assessments. You're starting the school year and you're about to start assessing your students, seeing where they're at beginning the year and where we need to start instruction. Just a reminder that there are 3 types of assessments required under the Strong Readers Act. We have universal screening, which tells us who needs interventions. It tells us what students are below level and who's needing some help. And then we have diagnostic assessments that tell us what type of help do they need, what type of interventions do we need to provide for these students. And then we have progress monitoring. Is our intervention that we're doing working? Is the student progressing? So this is where I'm going to just pull up the infographic that I showed you on this, also posted on our website. So if you're looking for this, you can find this on our website. And if you'll look over here, it starts with the screening assessment. So this gives you a description of what a screening assessment is. As far as Strong Readers goes, we have approved list of screening assessments. So you're required to give one of those 8 on our list. We have a mirror that we pay for, but if you don't want to do a mirror, you can pick one of our others. But you're required to screen every student kindergarten through 3rd grade under one of those screening assessments. Then if the student is found to be performing below that 40th percentile rank, you're going to give them a diagnostic assessment. We do not have an approved list for this. Your district can use anything they think fits their needs. And you're going to give them a diagnostic assessment that will show you what skills they're lacking, where their skill gaps are, and what you need to start working on with that student. And then you would start providing those interventions, move over here to some progress monitoring. You also could have your students who are on level and you might be continuing to progress monitor them, making sure they're continuing to make that progress. You can look here at the 2 different types of progress monitoring assessments and look at those. And just remember that it's always a cycle. We're progress monitoring, and then we're adjusting instruction, providing instruction interventions, and then progress monitor again. Continue that cycle of adjusting instruction, assessing, and just continuing that cycle. And then we have the third type of assessment that's on this, is that summative assessment. I should say the fourth type. We've already talked about the three that's required in strong readers, but also you have summative assessments. So where we see that is when we get into third grade with the state test. We will have some retention coming back soon in upcoming years under strong readers that will be tied to some of these to the summative assessment. But this is a great infographic. I even had when we talked about this last year at the beginning of the year, I had a district that sent me, they had taken this infographic and they had actually changed out some of the wording and put in what assessments their school uses. And I thought that was great. And then they shared that with their teachers of like, our school uses, DIBELS for a screening assessment. And then they put in what kind of diagnostic assessment they use. They put in what progress monitoring they use. They put, the OSTP over here on the summative. So this would be a great resource, and just thinking about even how you could tailor it to what your district or your school site does specifically, and just using that as information for your teachers and some training for your teachers. All right, I'm going to move on into some of the questions that we received from you. I received these ahead of time on that form, and these are some that weren't naturally addressed in some of the previous sections. So on the slip, I had some questions about, because we condensed the slip, it was 4 pages long, and under statute, some of the requirements were taken out this time. So we reduced some of the things in there and made our slip now where it's just a front and back, 2-page thing. So one of the questions I got already is, are the virtual meetings allowed? And can we still mail the slip if we're unable to get a parent in person? So previously we had a whole section of like, this meeting was virtual, and by signing this, I'm confirming that everyone on the call was in agreement. You can still have a virtual meeting. We just decided that that wasn't the best use of that being on everyone's form and taking up that spot. So certainly you can still do a virtual form. And if you do, you can just document that and attach that to here, just documenting that we held this virtually, everyone was in agreement, and I'm signing this as the administrator, reading specialist, whoever. So you can still do that. We just didn't leave that as a spot on the slip itself. Same for if you are completely unable to get a parent, you've tried everything you can, you cannot get that parent to come up there. We did have a spot where you could document, like, we had this meeting, they didn't show up, or we called them this date, they wouldn't respond. We went to their house, no one would answer the door. Whatever it is, however you tried to contact them, you can still certainly just document that, type that out, handwrite that, whatever you want to do, staple it to your slip. You can do that. We know there's cases of where that happened, and then maybe we had to mail it certified mail. I've had to do that personally. So if that happens, you can still do that. We just didn't leave that on the slip so that we could make the slip be a smaller, shorter document. I did have a few questions come in about the reading plan once it's already opened right now. I had some people asking questions about entering a variety of information, if staff changes, etc., on the intervention section. That intervention section, it is a multi-select now on what skills it's addressing. We changed that after last year. So when you're entering, you're putting tier 2 interventions and you're using maybe the same materials to address PA and phonics and comprehension, or you're doing something for fluency. You can multi-select on the skill, but it's not going to allow you to multi-select on the tier or who's administering. So like if you put reading specialist or you put a para, it's not going to let you multi-select on those. So you would need to put a separate line. I will say, if you're somewhere where it's very complicated, like maybe I have this particular grade is the reading specialist, but in Miss So-and-so's class, their time didn't align up and it's being done by a different person. It doesn't necessarily have to be every single thing. If it's very complicated, you have lots of different things. But what we need to see is when I'm looking at your skill, when I'm looking at your plan, I need to know, do they have a plan for how to address phonics interventions with a tier 2 student at this grade level? So we need to know a general plan of what, if I brought a student to your school, this is the grade level they're in. They need interventions in this skill on this level of support, do you have a plan for what to do with that particular child? Do you have a plan of what to do with the student who is in that level of need and that level of skill? So that's what we need to see. I think that's the only ones I had for the plan. We have had a little issues with the plan. It wasn't taking dates for a little while. I think we have those all sorted out. So if you're having any technical issues with the plan, things it's not letting you save, make sure you email me that, because I can get responses from OES pretty quickly. But so far, everything I've heard from any district users, I've been able to get with them and it has been addressed. So as far as I know, everything is working as it should right now. If that is not the case for you, please email me and let me know so I can help you with that. Statewide screener is another thing that I had entered multiple times on the question. People want to know what you're starting, what that looks like, what it's going to be. So the process that was put into place is that it would be selected by OEQA. And OEQA is running the RFP, and they're going to narrow it to 3 screeners. It will be a screener that will screen for math as well as literacy. So it will be one for both. And OEQA is running that. They're narrowing it to 3. And then we will get that from them, and we will run our process to select one from the 3 that they've narrowed it to. This will not be in effect for schools for use until school year 27-28. So right now, the school year you're starting, we offer a Mira. You can use it. If you don't want Mira, then you can pick from our list. But we are running that process right now. We're hoping to know what the one is by early 2027, so we can use that spring semester to be offering training for all of our districts, so they'll all be ready to roll out beginning of the year of 27-28. It will be one screener that everyone will be required to use. So there will no longer be an approved list after this current school year. Starting 27-28, weeks 27-28, we will all be using the same screener. So any questions about any of that, Melissa?
There is not.
Wow. Okay. Another thing to remember is I do have the links for the meetings are available on that school support for schools page. You can also find the recordings there. You can also find where you can submit more questions if you have any more questions. Yeah, I think I'm done sharing that. So that's all I have planned for today. Of course, that did take our full hour almost. Melissa, do you have anything else to announce out?
I really think that most of these we have been able to address in the chat. There have been some questions about a lot of questions about what counts for the micro credential, or the interventionist, that type of thing, and naming some different professional development. And the statute is very specific of talking about somebody with a micro credential. So we will be making sure that that is clearly worded so that everyone knows who does or does not. And again, if you have questions, please reach out. If you have the question, others likely do as well, so that we can push out the answers. So
I am looking through. Okay. So I think we've answered everything we can. If you have any other questions, you can put them in that to be answered next month. If it's something that you need to know, you can always email me and we will get back with you as soon as we can. We always want to provide the best support that we can for our district so that we can help you as you're supporting our kids. So thank you for everything. Hope you all have the best back to school time, smooth transition. Hope everything goes smoothly. And as always, thank you everything you do for all of our readers across the state every day.